Hello, and welcome to the Many Worlds Writing Podcast. This is the show that's all about how to brainstorm, write, edit, publish, and sell a powerful speculative fiction novel, and maybe just change the world too. I'm your host, Heather Davis. I'm an Author Accelerator certified book coach, a developmental editor, and a fellow storyteller like yourself. And it's my mission to be 100% real about what it takes to write a cohesive and powerful speculative fiction novel. I'll share the very same tips, tricks, and techniques that I use with my own clients to help you write the best novel you're capable of writing. From character arc to plot structure, from deep-level world building to creating a kick-ass magic system, we're going to cover it all. So if that sounds like something that would be helpful to you on your journey, please follow or subscribe to the show. It's the very easiest way to show your support and make sure there are many, many more episodes to come. Did you know that your prose is actually the least important part of your novel? Okay, so it's not the least important part of your novel, but it is the last important part of your novel. Meaning, if you want to write a really great novel, one that readers want to read and agents want to represent, and people gush to their friends about, there's actually a lot that has to happen before you ever put a single word on the page. Let me tell you a story. Several years ago, a writer came to me with a manuscript that he'd been working on for well over a decade. Now, this guy wasn't a new writer. In fact, he'd published several nonfiction books that were very successful. He'd also been to all the conferences and he'd read all the craft books, and he knew very well what a story should be. The problem was, when he sat down to write one and then revise it again and again, it just wasn't coming out right. He knew that because he kept submitting it to agents, and those agents would reject it. Now, a lot of them gave him form letter rejections, which weren't very helpful. But some of them gave him more personalized rejections that really spoke to the power of his prose, telling him he was a wonderful writer, but something just felt missing from the work. So that's why he came to me. He was frustrated. He wanted a fresh perspective on his work. During our first session, he asked me two very insightful questions. Questions that I think every writer should be asking themselves before they sit down to write a novel. The first question was, how do I know what's important when I'm writing a novel? And the second question was, how do I know what's missing? Again, those are questions that I think every writer should be asking, because the answers to those questions are the key to making sure that you write or revise a novel that readers want to read and agents want to represent. So how do you know what's important in your novel and what's gone missing? Well, it's actually a pretty tall order, but not impossible to achieve. What you really need is a way to rank the importance of story elements so that you know what you need to focus on first, second, third, and so on. Why? Because writing a novel is like building a house. It really is, I promise you. Just like you wouldn't paint or try and put up knickknacks before you built the frame of a house or hung the drywall, you also wouldn't try and write a novel without doing some foundational work. Because if you try to write a novel without doing the foundational work that has to happen first, the novel often collapses in on itself before you ever even reach the midpoint. But let's say you tough it out. Let's say you make it all the way to the end. Well, then you've got a bunch of scenes that have been cobbled together that feel exciting from the outside, like from your perspective, but from the reader's perspective, they don't really seem to hang together well. It doesn't seem to be working. It doesn't feel like a novel. It just feels like a bunch of stuff that happened. That's exactly why I created a handy little tool that I call the hierarchy of storytelling concerns. This hierarchy is a magical way of thinking about the elements of story that highlights the order in which you need to focus on them so that your novel feels cohesive and sturdy and powerful throughout. Okay, let's dive in and take a closer look at the hierarchy. I like to think of it as a pyramid with the most foundational parts at the base. First, the very first layer of that base is going to be the point of your novel. The point of your novel is the message, the lesson, the big emotional epicenter of your novel that guides and gives a container to the rest of your novel. It's the thing that your protagonist is going to learn about the world or about themselves, maybe about both. And it really is the guiding force and the most foundational layer of your novel. Without a point, your novel really is just going to feel like a bunch of stuff that happens to someone because there won't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. There won't seem to be a purpose to what's happening. And you really do want the reader to feel like there is some sort of a purpose, that you're making sense of the chaos of the existence of this character. Now, if you don't know what the point of your novel is, and this feels a little shaky to you, no worries. Go check out episode 1 of this podcast. I fully explain what the point is, and I even include a handy workbook that you can snag to do that work. Okay, let's move on to the second layer of the pyramid. Once you've established the point of your novel, the next thing to do is to figure out the character arc of your protagonist. Your protagonist is not going to stay the same from the beginning of the novel to the end of the novel. No way. That would be super boring for readers. Instead, they're going to change. In fact, novels are all about change. Your protagonist is going to start out as a very flawed person. And by the time they're done with your novel, they're going to be at least a little bit less flawed. And they're not just going to change any old flaws. No, they're going to change very specific flaws or misbeliefs that they have. Ones that are related to the point of your novel. So when I think about story, it's all about the protagonist learning the point of the novel. You have a point, it's the big message, big lesson. Now your novel is there to teach your protagonist that lesson. Okay, it's time to move up to the third layer of the pyramid. Once you've established the point of your novel, and once you've created a meaningful character arc for your protagonist, it's time to move on to creating a meaningful plot. So the plot isn't just a bunch of stuff that happens. If your plot becomes that, then it only feels exciting to you because you've learned that those types of events should be exciting. It won't really inspire any excitement in your readers. Instead, you have to really step back and think about your plot strategically. Now, it doesn't matter if you're a plotter and you like to plot the entire thing out first, or if you're a discovery writer and you kind of write by the seat of your pants. Either way can work. The thing about it is that you really need to think about your plot with reference to your point and your protagonist's character arc. Meaning, the plot isn't just there to be exciting. The plot is actually there to push, pull, force, finagle, shove your protagonist through their character arc. So every single event that you are throwing at them is there for a reason. It's there to challenge the misbelief that they have about the point of your novel. Remember, your protagonist doesn't understand the point of your novel. Their character arc is going to take them from not understanding the point to a place where they do get it. And your plot is the one that's going to force them along that arc. So every single thing that you throw at them needs to be thrown at them strategically. You need to ask yourself, is this event actually helping my protagonist along that journey of their character arc? And how is it helping them? So that's really what plot is there for. When I think of story, I'm going to reframe it one more time. A story is how your protagonist learns the point of the novel and is forced to learn the point of a novel by the events in your plot. That's what a story is. So the events of the plot are going to change your protagonist. So you have to be very careful about what those events are. Okay, we just got done talking about the first 3 layers of your novel. Those 3 layers of the pyramid have to happen before you start writing. The 4th and 5th layer actually happen while you're writing. The 4th layer of the pyramid is all about making sure that your scenes are connected via cause and effect. Scenes are like dominoes. One pushes the other over. we have absolutely no room for barely related events or vignettes. That's not a novel. What you need to make sure of is that each scene is causing the next one to happen, and that there is both a story logic and an emotional continuity that runs throughout. Meaning, when you're writing, if your protagonist was shot in one scene, then in the next scene, we better see them dealing with it physically and emotionally. Don't let either of those parts go missing. Make sure that it's tracking. Make sure story logic is tracking. Make sure the emotional continuity of the situation is tracking. Now, I know for big things like being shot, that probably makes a lot of sense. But what I see happen with writers all the time is when something emotionally would be carrying over from the last scene, it usually goes missing. Like, let's imagine that two characters had a fight in the last scene. The writer might pick up in the next scene, and these two characters seem fine with each other. They don't seem like in the last scene, they just had a knockdown, drag out fight. So you have to really check for that. Say, how is my protagonist feeling at the end of the last scene? What was going on in their head? What were they thinking about? And how is that going to manifest itself in this new scene that I'm writing? We've made it to the fifth and final layer of the pyramid. This layer of the pyramid, again, happens while you're writing. The fifth layer is the point of view of your protagonist and their interiority. This kind of goes hand in hand with the idea of the cause and effect trajectory of your novel and having things have emotional continuity. So what is your protagonist's point of view? It's not limited to first person, second person, third person, nothing like that. Those are elements of it, but that's not the totality of it. Instead, it also extends to your protagonist's interiority, their thoughts and fears and hopes and dreams and their ideas and their questions and all of that stuff. So your protagonist is our window to the world, and you can't leave them off the page because we're there to learn about them. We're there to watch them change. And the only way that the change can be meaningful to us is if we truly understand them. That includes everything about them, even their backstory. So we have to have that window. Remember, your novel isn't being recorded by a video camera. We're actually sinking down behind someone's eyes, your protagonist, and we're seeing the world as only they can see it, right? We're seeing it through their lens, through their perspective. So that is what you really need to get on the page. That's where the magic happens. That's where the point and the character arc and the plot and the cause and effect trajectory all come together. Your protagonist is the one who is interpreting the world for us and telling us what all of it means and helping us find meaning in their journey. Okay, writers, if you're ready to dive a little bit deeper into these ideas, I've created a handy little workbook for you that you can access at manyworldswriting.com/storytelling. Or you can get it right in the show notes of this episode. Either way, I hope this episode was really helpful to you. Please follow or subscribe to the show and share it with a writer friend. It's the very easiest way for you to show your support and let me know that you're interested in hearing more. Until next time, keep writing, keep dreaming, and remember, the world needs your stories right now. So don't you dare give up on your novel or yourself. See you later.